This discussion concerns one of the greatest intellectual figures produced by human civilization, the illustrious mind known as Al-Biruni, often pronounced both as Al-Biruni or Al-Biruni. He passed away in 440 Hijri, approximately 1,000 years ago, corresponding to the year 1048 CE. Al-Biruni is recognized as one of the most remarkable minds in Islamic history and, indeed, in the annals of global intellectual history. He is arguably the first of the great polymaths in the intellectual sciences within the Muslim world and is highly regarded for his contributions across a vast range of disciplines. His scholarly interests were exceedingly diverse, spanning mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and various branches of the natural and social sciences. Al-Biruni's intellectual breadth is astounding and, by today's standards, it is rare to find such individuals capable of excelling in so many fields. He made significant contributions to the sciences of mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy, as well as to fields like anthropology and pharmacology. One of his renowned works is his treatise on India, which we will explore in more detail. Moreover, he documented his extensive travels, adding to the rich legacy of Islamic civilization. Some scholars have compared Al-Biruni to Leonardo da Vinci, noting that Al-Biruni preceded da Vinci by approximately 500 years. He was truly a figure worthy of deep study and admiration. Sadly, his contributions are underappreciated among many Muslims today, and his name is often unfamiliar. However, his intellectual legacy is profound. Learning about him and his writings, particularly his famous work on India, one cannot help but be captivated. Al-Biruni wrote over 140 books, though only about 30 of them have survived to the present. Some of his works remain in manuscript form. Remarkably, he authored his first book at the age of 17, focusing on the differing calendars used by various civilizations. Among his many works, Al-Biruni's magnum opus is his extensive treatise on India, which spans over 600 pages. This work was translated into English over 120 years ago by Edward Sachot, although it is not considered the most accurate translation. Notably, Al-Biruni's influence extends beyond the Muslim world. There is a crater on the moon named after him, as well as a comet bearing his name. His contributions to science, particularly his remarkably accurate calculation of the Earth's radius, were unrivaled for centuries and remain a testament to his genius. Who was this extraordinary polymath, and what can be learned from his life? It is essential to acknowledge that Al-Biruni was not a traditional Islamic scholar in the religious sense. He did not write about Islamic jurisprudence or theology, rather, his expertise lay in the natural sciences and humanities. Nonetheless, his contributions are integral to the broader achievements of Muslim civilization. Islamic civilization, distinct from Islamic religious sciences, was a dominant force in global history for over a millennium. During the Dark Ages in Europe, the Muslim world was a beacon of intellectual and cultural achievement. It was the superpower of its time, unmatched in various fields of knowledge and innovation. However, the decline of this civilization began only a few centuries ago, a phenomenon that continues to invite reflection. Al-Biruni was born in 973 CE in what is now Uzbekistan, specifically in the region of Khorazm, in the capital city of Kaf. His birthplace, a suburb known as Biran, from which his name Al-Biruni is derived, was situated in a province that produced many influential scholars and thinkers. This region was a hub of intellectual diversity, where pioneers in fields like mathematics, hadith, and theology emerged. Al-Biruni belonged to a generation that carried forward the legacy of preserving and advancing knowledge, particularly Greek thought, which had been largely abandoned in Europe at that time but was actively studied and developed in the Muslim world. This rich intellectual context fostered Al-Biruni's wide-ranging contributions, solidifying his place as one of history's most influential polymaths. His life and works continue to inspire scholars and historians, reminding us of the profound impact of Islamic civilization on the advancement of human knowledge. Philosophers of the Islamic Golden Age, like Al-Biruni, embraced and developed the sciences inherited from the Greek tradition without perceiving any inherent conflict between these studies and their religious beliefs. Among this intellectual class, figures like Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Al-Biruni himself, the fusion of Greek science with Islamic thought was seamless. They did not see a division between their faith and the study of the natural world, philosophy, or logic. In contrast to more skeptical religious scholars who viewed Greek science with suspicion, this group engaged deeply with these disciplines, encompassing not only metaphysics but also the natural sciences, logic, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Aristotle, for instance, was not limited to metaphysical speculation. His writings extended to subjects such as physics, chemistry, and medicine. Al-Biruni, as part of this intellectual movement, was educated both in the Quranic sciences and in the Greek sciences. The political landscape of al-Biruni's time was one of significant fragmentation and decentralization within the Muslim world. Although there existed the notion of a singular caliphate, the reality was much more complex, resembling a federation of semi-independent kingdoms and dynasties. While the caliphate maintained symbolic unity, local rulers, often hereditary kings, wielded ultimate power within their regions. These dynasties were interconnected through a shared Islamic culture, though politically they were independent or semi-autonomous. The rulers, seeking to assert their prestige, frequently surrounded themselves with scholars, poets, scientists, and intellectuals who were financed by the royal courts. Al-Biruni, throughout much of his career, was one such intellectual in the service of a royal court. Al-Biruni's career took a significant turn when the dynasty he was affiliated with was overthrown by Mahmud of Ghazni, a powerful figure in Islamic history. Mahmud not only conquered the region but also forcibly relocated the intellectuals of the court, including Al-Biruni, to his own court in Ghazna, modern-day Afghanistan. While this forced relocation could be seen as a form of intellectual abduction, it also provided Al-Biruni with new opportunities to interact with other scholars and develop his ideas. It was under Mahmud's patronage that Al-Biruni would later embark on his famed journey to India, a voyage that significantly influenced his intellectual legacy. Theologically, Al-Biruni is a figure difficult to categorize. He cannot be easily placed within the traditional Sunni framework or among the more defined Islamic sects of his time. His writings contain phrases that suggest a variety of influences, some aligning with philosophical schools of thought, while others might hint at an affinity with Sharia doctrines. However, his works demonstrate a level of independent thought that defies clear classification. Various intellectual and religious groups have attempted to claim him, but he remains unaligned with any particular sect or ideology. Notably, his writings reveal a certain skepticism toward the Athari Creed, which emphasizes strict adherence to scriptural texts without delving into speculative theology. Nevertheless, Al-Biruni's work transcends rigid theological boundaries, positioning him as an intellectual whose influence stretched across disciplines and ideologies. In summary, Al-Biruni's intellectual and cultural contributions emerged from a dynamic and multifaceted era in Islamic history. His works reflect the intersection of religious belief, Greek scientific heritage, and a political landscape characterized by fragmented dynasties that nevertheless fostered great cultural achievements. His legacy remains that of an independent thinker, whose vast intellectual pursuits continue to inspire scholars across disciplines. Within Sunni tradition, a particular hadith has sparked significant discourse, though its authenticity remains debated. Al-Biruni, while not a scholar of hadith, approached this topic as a historian. He regarded the hadith, which recounts the Prophet Muhammad's encounter with the Jews of Medina celebrating on the 10th of Muharram, with skepticism. According to this narration, the Prophet is said to have remarked that Muslims had a greater right to this celebration and subsequently instituted fasting on the 10th of Muharram in commemoration of Moses, Musa, salvation. Al-Biruni, based on his extensive study of calendars, contended that the Jewish Passover, commemorating this event, could not have occurred on the 10th of Muharram during that year. As a result, he rejected the authenticity of this hadith. This skepticism towards hadith is reflective of Al-Biruni's broader intellectual approach, as he rarely referenced hadith in his writings. His works, instead, often focused on science, history, and theology. Among his numerous contributions, his most famous is his treatise on India, a comprehensive study of the subcontinent's cultures, religions, and sciences. Additionally, Al-Biruni engaged in a notable exchange of ideas with Ibn Sina, Avicenna, a contemporary and senior scholar, through a series of correspondences consisting of 18 questions. Though it is uncertain whether they met in person, their intellectual dialogue showcases Al-Biruni's critical and inquisitive mind. He demonstrated a willingness to challenge accepted ideas, particularly those of the Greek philosophers that Ibn Sina often embraced. In one of their discussions, Al-Biruni questioned the Greek notion that objects contract when cooled. He cited the example of water expanding as it freezes, causing a glass of water to crack, thus contradicting the claim that all objects shrink when cold. Similarly, he rejected Aristotle's assertion that celestial bodies must move in perfect circles, proposing instead that their motion appeared elliptical. This challenge forced Ibn Sina to acknowledge that Aristotle might be incorrect. Al-Biruni's readiness to critique Aristotle through Ibn Sina underscores his intellectual independence and innovative thinking. Al-Biruni's works span a wide range of disciplines, including his early treatise, The Remnants of Previous Civilizations, written in his early 20s. This text is an exploration of the histories and calendars of various nations, such as the Zoroastrians, Jews, and Christians. Al-Biruni's fascination with time and celestial movements is evident throughout his writings, particularly in his discussions of religious festivals and prayer times. Another significant work, the Book of Shadows, emphasizes into the calculation of time through the movement of shadows. In this highly detailed treatise, Al-Biruni demonstrates how the sun's movement influences the length of shadows, which in turn affects the calculation of time. He emphasized that timekeeping is fundamental to human existence, linking it to both religious practices and broader intellectual pursuits. Al-Biruni's contributions to Islamic civilization reflect a synthesis of scientific inquiry and cultural exploration, positioning him as a critical thinker who both respected and challenged established knowledge. His works, particularly in the realms of astronomy, history, and theology, continue to resonate as testaments to the intellectual vibrancy of the Islamic Golden Age. In one of his works, Al-Biruni delves into a discussion that is rare for him, an exploration of various schools of Islamic law. He presents a detailed summary of not only the four Sunni schools but also the positions of the Shia and other groups such as the Karmatians. While not prescribing any legal conclusions himself, Al-Biruni's focus is on the differences in prayer timings across these schools. What stands out in this work is his strong critique of the religious class, particularly those scholars who attacked him for attempting to derive prayer timings through astronomical and scientific principles. Though the names of these scholars remain unknown, Al-Biruni's writings indicate that he faced significant opposition from certain factions of the religious elite. Al-Biruni defended himself against these critics by asserting that to accurately calculate prayer timings, one must engage with the works of scientists such as Euclid and Ptolemy, whom he explicitly mentions by name. His frustration with these scholars, whom he viewed as dismissive of the fields of astronomy and trigonometry, is palpable. He argued that these sciences are essential for determining prayer times, and merely observing shadows daily is insufficient. In his defense, he stated that one could easily estimate prayer timings in any locality by studying basic scientific principles. Al-Biruni's tone becomes notably harsh as he criticizes these religious figures, asserting that those who refuse to engage with these sciences are no better than the common people devoid of knowledge. He demanded that if they would not pursue these avenues of study, they should step aside and allow experts to carry out their work. In this context, Al-Biruni's disdain for those who blindly follow traditional teachings without further inquiry is evident. He accused them of resisting scientific study out of a misguided belief that such fields lead to disbelief, kufr. He argued that this notion was entirely false, and his criticism extended to their refusal to even engage with scientific discourse. He recounts a scenario in which one of his critics, upon being told to study the sciences, responds by metaphorically plugging his ears and shouting louder to drown out the argument, suggesting that such individuals rely on volume and accusation rather than rational discourse. Al-Biruni's frustration with the religious class that opposed him illustrates the tension between the rational sciences and religious scholarship, a conflict that persists to this day. His anger is evident in his insistence that those who refuse to engage with scientific inquiry should step aside and allow the experts to continue their work. The broader tension between rational and religious sciences has long been a source of contention within Islamic thought, and Al-Biruni's experiences highlight this divide. Another of Al-Biruni's works, written for a ruler of his time, offers a highly detailed astronomical account, documenting the movements of celestial bodies and providing precise latitudinal and longitudinal coordinates for major cities. Remarkably accurate even by contemporary standards, this work exemplifies Al-Biruni's expertise in astronomy. Beyond this, he made significant contributions to the foundations of modern pharmacology and, interestingly, also authored a book on astrology, distinguishing it from his more scientifically grounded studies in astronomy. Al-Biruni's intellectual legacy is marked by his fierce defense of rational inquiry, his willingness to challenge established norms, and his contributions across various fields of science, from astronomy to pharmacology. His works continue to be a testament to the intellectual rigor of the Islamic Golden Age and the enduring tension between rational and religious thought. In this particular work, Al-Biruni provides a concise summary of several prominent methods of astrology. Although he appears to maintain a degree of skepticism, he acknowledges certain aspects of the practice. It is essential to recognize that during his era, astrology and astronomy were deeply intertwined, a contrast to the modern distinction between the two, where one is regarded as a natural science and the other as metaphysical. This connection between astrology and astronomy in his time is a notable point that merits further exploration. Al-Biruni's intellectual pursuits were not without some degree of compromise, as can be expected in such a multifaceted scholar. For instance, he famously calculated the circumference and radius of the Earth with surprising accuracy while standing on a mountain in what is now Punjab, Pakistan, a feat remarkable even by contemporary standards. Among his many contributions, his most celebrated and captivating work is his book on India, which he authored during his time in the region. Al-Biruni first came to prominence for many due to his renowned work on India, a text that some scholars have identified as one of the earliest examples of anthropology. The book's title, The Verifying of What India Has of Acceptable Ideas to the Intellect or Rejected Ideas, reflects the intellectual rigor with which he approached the diverse beliefs and customs he encountered. In this text, Al-Biruni meticulously chronicles the lives, beliefs, and systems of India, drawing from his personal observations and interactions with its people. His approach is notable for its objectivity and fairness, as he strove to provide a balanced and unbiased account while maintaining his identity as a Muslim scholar. Rather than focusing solely on political figures or rulers, Al-Biruni analyzed into the everyday beliefs and practices of the Indian populace. The circumstances surrounding the creation of this book are also of great historical interest. At the time, Al-Biruni was residing in Ghazni under the rule of Mahmud of Ghazni, who eventually led a military campaign into India. Mahmud's invasion of India is a subject of intense debate, interpreted through starkly different lenses by various groups. Al-Biruni accompanied Mahmud on this campaign and, as one of the foremost intellectuals of his time, took the opportunity to immerse himself in the culture and knowledge systems of India. Al-Biruni's linguistic prowess greatly facilitated his study of Indian culture. Fluent in at least 5 to 7 languages, including Sanskrit, Hebrew, Greek, Persian, and Arabic, he demonstrated an exceptional ability to engage with diverse intellectual traditions. During his time in India, he mastered Sanskrit and accessed some of the most ancient and authoritative texts of the Hindu and Vedic traditions. Furthermore, he interacted with local scholars, known as pundits, absorbing their knowledge and engaging with their cultural practices. Although the exact duration of Al-Biruni's stay in India is unclear, it is generally believed that he remained for at least a year. His observations and interactions during this period culminated in the creation of his seminal work on India. At the beginning of this text, Al-Biruni feels compelled to defend his decision to write about a foreign culture, likely in response to criticism from his religious contemporaries. Throughout his writings, he is frequently seen addressing these detractors, who primarily stem from the religious scholarly class. In this particular case, Al-Biruni emphasizes the importance of truth, even when discussing an enemy, citing a verse from the Quran to support his argument. He also highlights the rarity of scholars who can present opposing viewpoints without allowing their biases to cloud their judgment. In one striking example, Al-Biruni comments on the tendency of Sunni scholars to misrepresent the beliefs of the Mutazilites. His commitment to intellectual integrity, even when discussing beliefs contrary to his own, sets Al-Biruni apart as a scholar who sought to bridge cultural and intellectual divides. His works, especially his book on India, stand as a testament to his dedication to knowledge, objectivity, and cross-cultural understanding. In this discourse, Al-Biruni references specific scholars, stating that certain individuals falsely claim that Allah lacks knowledge. He refutes this by clarifying that the scholars in question affirm that Allah possesses knowledge as an intrinsic aspect of his essence. In this, he highlights a common misinterpretation of their views, which often leads to accusations rather than accurate representation. Al-Biruni emphasizes that these scholars do not deny divine knowledge, but rather articulate it differently, and it is the interpretation of their opponents that distorts their stance. This particular example from Al-Biruni's work demonstrates his commitment to truth and fairness. He strives to present an accurate and balanced view of Indian civilization, rather than merely criticizing it. His primary aim is to provide an objective account, stating that he does not seek to refute his opponent's arguments but to record them faithfully. In his own words, his book serves as a historical register of truth, presenting the ideas of the Hindus exactly as they are. This approach is significant as it offers an impartial narrative, devoid of bias or distortion. Al-Biruni's renowned work on India has been translated by Edward Sachot and is readily available. In this book, he meticulously examines various aspects of Hinduism, including its rituals, metaphysical beliefs, intellectual life, and philosophical foundations. He examined into the Hindu concept of the soul, cosmology, and the transmigration of the soul, while also drawing comparisons between Hinduism and ancient Greek thought. His aim is not to dismiss Hinduism as mere idolatry or shirk, but rather to explore it as a complex and sophisticated civilization. Notably, Al-Biruni asserts that pure Hinduism, as practiced by its learned scholars, is monotheistic, while it is the masses who have mistakenly adopted the practice of idol worship. Despite not being a Hindu himself, and remaining a devout Muslim, he adopts a neutral stance in his examination of the faith, refraining from sarcasm or condescension. His analysis is free from vulgar or dismissive language, treating Hindu civilization with a level of respect and appreciation, even while maintaining his own religious beliefs. Al-Biruni's methodology was remarkably advanced for his time. His approach to presenting the beliefs of other civilizations in a fair and objective manner was groundbreaking. Renowned Orientalist Arthur Jeffrey noted that Al-Biruni's most significant contribution was not only scientific but also methodological, as he was among the first to strive for a neutral and holistic portrayal of his opponent's beliefs. Despite being a practicing Muslim and fully aware that the beliefs he described did not align with Islamic theology, Al-Biruni's commitment to factual accuracy and fairness remained resolute. One of the most fascinating aspects of Al-Biruni's work is his detailed exploration of how the Indian people calculated time, a subject of particular interest in his writings. His reference to the Zing tables and other astronomical works, such as the Almagest by Ptolemy, further showcases his intellectual depth and broad range of knowledge. His scholarly contributions continue to be relevant and worthy of study, especially for their methodical rigor and unbiased approach to understanding different civilizations. The term Almagest, derived from the Arabic adaptation of the ancient Greek word majestic, traces its origins to the influential work of Ptolemy, who authored the Almagest. The Arabs translated Ptolemy's work and added the definite article al, resulting in the term Almagest, which continues to be used to this day. Al-Biruni extensively studied such works and produced the renowned Zing tables. These tables detailed the positions of celestial bodies, offering meticulous charts of stars and their locations at specific times. In his treatise on India, Al-Biruni incorporated Indian astronomical knowledge, demonstrating his respect for cross-cultural scientific exchange. One fascinating aspect of Al-Biruni's scholarly contributions lies in his method for calculating the Earth's radius. The first known attempt to calculate this was made by Eratosthenes in 195 BCE, 1,000 years before Al-Biruni. Eratosthenes employed a method based on measuring the change in latitude of a celestial object at two distant locations along the same longitude. By knowing the exact distance between these 2 points, one could estimate the Earth's radius. However, the complexity of accurately measuring the linear distance between these locations posed significant challenges. Eratosthenes' calculation, while innovative, was not entirely satisfactory due to the limitations of measuring long distances with precision. Al-Biruni devised a more refined and accurate method that required fewer measurements and did not necessitate extensive travel. His technique was simpler, involving only 2 calculations and requiring just one location. To execute this method, one needed a mountain and a flat horizon, such as a plain or ocean, to allow for a clear view of the horizon from the mountain's peak. The 2 critical inputs for this calculation were the height of the mountain and the angle of the horizon as seen from the mountain's summit. Al-Biruni ingeniously measured the mountain's height using trigonometry. Rather than using traditional methods such as dropping a string, he calculated the height by observing the angle of the mountain's peak from two distinct points, P1 and P2. Knowing the distance between P1 and P2, along with the angles from both positions, allowed him to accurately determine the height of the mountain. Al-Biruni applied this method to a mountain in present-day Punjab, Pakistan, where he successfully calculated the mountain's height. Using this information, he proceeded to calculate the Earth's radius. From the mountain's summit, he measured the angle of the horizon, denoted as theta, and used trigonometric principles to deduce the Earth's radius. This methodology, advanced for its time, underscores Al-Biruni's remarkable contributions to both astronomy and mathematics. His ability to refine earlier techniques and provide more accurate results attests to his intellectual prowess. His work serves as a testament to the rich scientific heritage of the Islamic Golden Age and continues to inspire modern scholars. In this discussion, the angle in question is represented by cosine theta. To clarify, theta at the top of the mountain is the same as theta in the right-angle triangle being analyzed. This is because the angle at the mountain's peak forms a right-angle triangle, and the remaining angle, which is 90 degrees minus theta, corresponds to the same angle in the triangle below. Therefore, cosine theta equates to the adjacent side, which is the Earth's radius, r, over the hypotenuse, which is the Earth's radius plus the height of the mountain, r plus h. This relationship is straightforward. Cosine theta equals r over r plus h. Given that the height, h, has already been calculated and the angle theta has been measured from the top of the mountain, solving for r becomes a simple algebraic and trigonometric task. The formula simplifies to r equals h divided by secant theta minus 1. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and in geometric terms, secant is the ratio of the hypotenuse to the adjacent side. This calculation, though basic in principle, is a testament to the elegance of simplicity in scientific inquiry. Al-Biruni performed this experiment and found theta to be approximately 34 degrees. He subsequently calculated the Earth's radius to be 12,833,337 cubits, which converts to roughly 6,000 kilometers. While this estimate was around 300 kilometers short of the actual modern value of 6,372 kilometers, it was remarkably accurate for the time. By comparison, Eratosthenes, the earlier Greek scholar, calculated the Earth's radius to be around 5,200 kilometers, making his estimation over 1,000 kilometers off the mark. Al-Biruni's method represented a significant advancement in precision and would take centuries to be surpassed by more sophisticated techniques. This remarkable achievement demonstrates the intellectual prowess of Al-Biruni and highlights the innovative approaches that defined the Islamic Golden Age. His method of calculating the Earth's radius, based on simple yet effective observations, remains a powerful example of scientific ingenuity. In conclusion, the broader implications of Al-Biruni's work extend beyond mere scientific achievement. It raises profound questions about the role of intellectual curiosity and empirical research in the flourishing of civilizations. A society cannot thrive on religious scholarship alone. Intellectual exploration in fields such as science, mathematics, and philosophy is equally crucial for cultural and civilizational advancement. Al-Biruni, while deeply aware of religious orthodoxy, often found himself at odds with conservative religious figures of his time. His work, including controversial subjects such as astrology, demonstrates the tension between intellectual freedom and religious dogma. This tension invites reflection on the nature of progress within any civilization. While religious scholars define orthodoxy and interpret divine revelation, it is the scientists, philosophers, and intellectuals who push the boundaries of human knowledge. The question arises, what would happen if religious authorities were given political power to enforce their interpretation of societal ideals? Would society still produce intellectual giants like Al-Biruni, or would such figures be suppressed? Ultimately, civilizations must balance the contributions of both religious and secular thought to achieve holistic growth. Al-Biruni's legacy is a testament to the necessity of intellectual freedom and scientific inquiry, reminding us that progress requires more than adherence to tradition. It demands curiosity, innovation, and a willingness to challenge established norms. It is important to encourage critical thinking rather than merely providing answers or dictating actions. Even within mainstream and traditional circles, intellectual figures who question established norms are often seen as a threat to the entrenched clergy. Consider the historical figures like Al-Biruni or Ibn Sina. What might have transpired if those who opposed their ideas had been in positions of authority during their lifetimes? The reality is that the very individuals who contributed to the advancement of Islamic civilization, those we now take pride in, may have been deemed heretical by those who defined religious orthodoxy at the time. This prompts a reflection on the balance between orthodoxy and intellectual progress. Religious scholars, known as the inheritors of the prophets, serve a vital role in preserving the faith. They safeguard theological principles and ensure the continuity of religious tradition. Without their guidance, the trajectory of Islamic civilization might have been vastly different. However, it raises the question, is it not perhaps beneficial for the flourishing of a civilization to maintain a separation between theological orthodoxy and intellectual exploration? Historically, many critics of unorthodox thinkers have confined themselves to writing books, delivering sermons. This separation has arguably been advantageous. Imagine if those individuals, whose interpretations of faith are often restrictive, were granted political power to enforce their vision of religion. It is perhaps a blessing that certain scholars, while holding rigid views on orthodoxy, lack the authority to impose their beliefs on others. Religious figures, such as those who declare theological deviance deserving of severe punishment, are critical in defining the boundaries of orthodoxy. However, history has shown that if their interpretations were enforced with political power, the intellectual giants we now celebrate, such as Ibn Sina, whose medical texts were studied for centuries in Europe, might not have survived to contribute to the intellectual heritage of humanity. Despite the occasional tension between religious orthodoxy and scientific or philosophical inquiry, both have played essential roles in shaping Islamic civilization. Figures like Ibn Rushd and others paved the way for the European Enlightenment, yet they faced resistance within their own societies. While their contributions to science and philosophy are undeniable, the preservation of the purity of the faith by religious scholars remains paramount. In the end, while the knowledge of the Earth's radius is fascinating, it is the preservation of the faith and its teachings that ensure salvation. This nuanced, and perhaps deliberately paradoxical, reflection highlights the complex interplay between orthodoxy and intellectual freedom in the history of Islamic thought.